A comedian walks into a publishing house and says, "I want to write my memoir." The publisher says, "Great. Is it true?" And the comedian says, "It says so right in the title, based on a true story. Everything in that book is a lie, and it might be the most honest book I've ever read." Today on Fireside Writer, we are doing something different. I'm reviewing a novel written by a stand-up comedian. And before you click away, hear me out. Norm MacDonald understood something about storytelling that most crime writers can never figure out. By the end of this video, I'm going to prove it to you with a story about a moth. Stay to the end. I mean it. The payoff is worth it. Welcome back to Fireside Writer. I'm TJ Stecker, crime fiction author. And this channel is for writers serious about craft and serious about getting published. Today we are talking about Based on a True Story by Norm MacDonald, a book that calls itself a memoir, reads like a crime novel, and acts like a con. If you only know Norm from SNL clips or YouTube compilations, you're about to meet a completely different animal. Now let's get into it. Published in 2016, Based on a True Story reads like Norm's memoir. It is no such thing. It's a novel wearing memoir's clothes, and Norm never breaks character the whole time. The book gives you a version of Norm's life story. The Canadian farm childhood, the comedy clubs, Saturday Night Live, real places, real names. And then he floods all of it with outrageous fabrications, delivered with a completely straight face. There's a Vegas gambling odyssey that threads through the whole thing that devolves into pure comedy. Norm describes events that could not possibly have happened, with the same flat sincerity he uses for events that totally did. And here's what makes it brilliant for our purposes. You can never find the seam. You're constantly running your own investigations as you read, sorting true from false. And the book knows you're doing it, and it plays you. That is an unreliable narrator executed at the highest level. Agatha Christie pulled this off. Norm does it for 300 pages and dares you to object. Now let me make the argument that this whole video hangs on. A joke is a mystery plot in miniature. Think about the mechanism. A mystery novel plants information, controls what you notice, and steers you toward a wrong assumption. Then the reveal lands and your brain instantly rereads everything that came before. The gasp at the end of a great mystery is your mind reorganizing the whole story in a single moment. A joke does the exact same thing on a compressed timeline. The setup plants an assumption. The misdirection lets that assumption harden. Then the punchline detonates it. The laugh is the same mental event as a gasp. A rereading, a sudden reorganization of everything you just read or just heard. Same mechanism, different reaction. The mystery writer is engineering a gasp out of a reader. The comedian is engineering a laugh out of an audience. Both are running a con where the mark enjoys being conned. The skill set transfers almost perfectly, which is why so many comedians turn out to be sneaky good prose writers, and why crime writers can learn so much from studying joke construction. When I'm building a twist in my own work, I'm thinking about it like a comedian. What assumption am I planting? How long can I let it sit? When the reveal lands, will the reader laugh, gasp, or curse at me? Any of those reactions means it worked. Silence means it did not. Real quick, if this kind of cross-genre talk is your thing, subscribe to this channel, because it's exactly what we do here. And if you want to go deeper, my newsletter is available at my website, tjstecker.com. Sign up. It's where I go deeper on the publishing process. The link is in the description. Okay, let's talk about the Russians. Here's the thing about Norm that casual fans miss completely. The man was seriously well-read. In interviews, he talks about Tolstoy and Dostoevsky the same way other comedians talk about Richard Pryor. He read the Russians deeply and repeatedly. And once you know that, you start seeing them everywhere in his book. It is the structure of the suffering. Russian literature finds the comedy inside the tragic, and the tragic inside the comedy. It refuses to separate them. A Dostoevsky character can be ridiculous and heartbreaking in the same sentence. Norm's book runs on that exact engine. The gambling thread is genuinely funny and genuinely sad, simultaneously, the whole way through. The ghostwriter's unraveling reads like something out of Gogol. Absurdity escalating with total commitment. And it is in the prose itself. Underneath the jokes, the sentences carry the fatalistic, grandly miserable music the Russians perfected. Norm writes about luck and ruin like a man who has read Dostoevsky specifically, which is essentially the patron saint of this entire book. He even signals this inside his most famous bit. When the Moth story shows up inside this book, listen to the names. They're Russian names. The whole joke is built around a Russian tragedy. A tiny doomed soul pouring out his existential despair. Norm did not pick those names by accident. He was telling us exactly who his teachers were. hiding the confession inside a joke about an insect in a podiatrist's office. So, crime writers, what do we steal from Norm MacDonald? Well, two things. First, steal his commitment. Norm never winks. The unreliable narrator of this book never elbows you in the ribs to let you know he's kidding. Total commitment to the bit is what makes the con work. And it's what makes the unreliable narrator work in crime fiction, too. The moment your narrator winks, the spell breaks. Second, steal his patience. Norm is famous for taking way too long to get to a punchline, stretching the setup way past the point of comfort, because he knew the length of the journey multiplies the force of the arrival. That is a twist construction. That is how you earn a reveal. The longer you can hold a reader with a wrong assumption without losing them, the harder the floor drops. I've been promising you the Moth story this whole video, so here it is. This is Norm's, I'd argue, most famous joke. He told a version of it on Conan that became legend, and the version he shares of it in this book is the full, glorious, novelistic rendition. I'm going to read it to you straight from the book, and as you listen, I want you to think about everything we just talked about. The Russian names, the miniature tragedy, the patient, the commitment, and then the turn. A moth goes into a podiatrist's office. The podiatrist says, "What's the problem?" The moth says, "Where do I begin with my problems? Every day I go to work with Gregory Vasilievich, and all day long I toil. But what is my work? I am a bureaucrat. And so every day I joylessly move papers from one place to another, and then back again. I no longer know what it is I actually do, and I don't even know if Gregory Vasilievich knows. He only knows that he has power over me, and this seems to bring him much happiness. And where is my happiness? It is when I awake in the morning and I do not know who I am. In that single moment, before the memory of who I am strikes me like a cane, and I take to the streets and walk, in malaise, here and then there, and then here again. And then it is time for work. Others stopped asking me what I do for a living, long ago, for they know I will have no answer, and will fix my empty eyes upon them. And they fear my melancholia might prove so deep as to be contagious. Sometimes, Doc, in the deepest dark of night, I awake in my bed, and I turn to my right, and with horror I see some old lady lying on my arm. An old lady that I once loved, Doc, in whose flesh I once found splendor, and now see only decay. An old lady who insults me by her very existence. Once, Doc, when I was young, I flew into a spider web, and was trapped. In my panic, I smashed my wings till the dust flew from them, but it did not free me, and only alerted the spider. The spider moved toward me, and I became still, and the spider stopped. I had heard many stories from my elders about spiders, about how they would sink their fangs into your cephalothorax, and you would be paralyzed, but aware as the spider slowly devoured you. But I remained as still as possible. But when the spider again began moving toward me, I smashed my wing into the cage of silk, and this time it worked. I cut into the web and freed myself and flew skyward. I was free and filled with joy, but this joy soon turned to horror. I looked down and saw that in my escape I had taken with me a single strand of silk, and at the end of that strand was the spider, who was scrambling up toward me. Was I to die high in the sky, where no spider should be? I flew this way, then that, and then finally I freed myself from the strand and watched as it floated earthward with the spider. But days later, a strange feeling descended upon my soul, Doc. I began to feel that my life was that single strand of silk, with a deadly spider racing up it and toward me, and that I was living in a state of paralysis as life devoured me whole. My daughter, Alexandria, felt of the cold of last winter. The cold took her, as it did many of us, and so my family mourned. And I placed on my countenance the look of grief, Doc, but it was my masquerade. I felt no grief for my dead daughter, but only envy. And so I have one child now, a boy, whose name is Stefan Mikhailovich Smokovanov. And I tell you now, Doc, with great and deep shame, the terrible truth. I no longer love him. When I look into his eyes, all I see is the same cowardice that I see when I catch a glimpse of my own eyes in the mirror. It is this cowardice that keeps me living, Doc, that keeps me moving from place to place, saying hello and goodbye, eating though hunger has long left me, walking without destination, and at night, lying beside the strange old lady in this burlesque of a life I endure. If only the cowardice would abate me for the time needed to reach over and pick up the cocked and loaded pistol that lies by my bedside table, then I might finally end this facade once and for all. But alas, the cowardice takes no breaks. It is what defines me. It is what frames my life. It is what I am. And yet I cannot resign myself to my own life. Instead, despair is my constant companion as I walk here and there, without dreams, without hope, and without love. Moth, says the podiatrist, your tale has moved me, and it is clear you need help, but it is help I cannot provide. You must see a psychiatrist and tell him of your troubles. Why on earth did you come to my office? The moth says, because the light was on. That is a man who read Dostoevsky and turned it into a joke about a moth. Setup, misdirection, payoff. A whole doomed Russian novel condensed into 2 minutes, detonated by a single line. That's The Craft. Study it, steal it. The book is called Based on a True Story. Read it. Tell me in the comments, where do you think the lies start? Because I promise you will be wrong. And that's the point. So until next time, go write something, and I'll see you by the fire.